Welcome back to our Moms Coaching Moms weekly video. Last week, we talked about how peer pressure affects us as moms. And this week, we're going to talk about how peer pressure affects our kids and what we can do about it. So all moms are invited to our Wednesday night NJAM conversations. Every single week they're happening. It's 7 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Mountain, and we're on Zoom. So there's a free Zoom registration link. But this week we're going to be specific. So every week we pick a different topic and talk about it. This week we're specifically talking about peer pressure affecting our kids and what we can do about it. So the first thing we wanted to start with was in Moms Coaching Moms, we have something that we have called, Christine and I have called this Fix It Factor. And what Fix It Factor is, it is our automatic response to give unasked for advice to fix, correct, teach, or relate to someone else. It generally comes from a place of wanting to help that person. And it also often causes a fight or flight response in that person. So we're going to give you a couple examples that you can see how it works. So Christine, do you want to start with your example you had shared earlier about, when someone hurts your kid? I mean, now school's going back, whether they're homeschooled or in public school or any other thing, we all deal with this.
Yeah, for me, I hate it when someone hurts my kid and when I see my kid hurting, and I want to help them and I want to fix it and to make it better. So what I often will say is, how much that sucks and how I understand that they are so upset and whatever. And then I usually follow it up with something like, I'm really sure that they didn't mean it that way. Or maybe they were having a bad day. Or, maybe they were upset about something and they took it out on you. And what does that have to do with what my kid is feeling because of something that someone else said? And it doesn't help to create connection. It doesn't help to heal a wound. It doesn't help to help them process through what they're feeling.
Yeah.
It usually just causes another spiral down. Exactly.
And one of my daughters this last year, so we have homeschooled all of our kids. We last year was obviously last couple of years was a little different with COVID and all that. However, I still was homeschooling a couple of them, and one in particular wasn't getting her work done. And so my fixing it was, well, you just need to get it done. Well, we just need to get on a better schedule. Well, we just need to, and that's that trying to fix it, trying to teach. Okay, so do we need to set a time? And then, all of this kind of stuff. Well, when I stepped back and some of the strategies that we use that we're going to talk more about, but when I started asking questions, what I ended up actually finding out was that she was scared to get to the place of having to take a test. She had test anxiety and a real fear of that. So in her head, what happened was, if I don't do the work, then I won't get to the test and I won't have to write the test. So I could have said, just get down to it. You just got to get it done as many times as I wanted, but I wasn't dealing with the actual problem. And so what that happened was it caused her, when we talk about causing that fight or flight, it caused her the flight. She would just hide more and withdraw even more. And then we never got what we wanted until we started having conversations and actually getting down to the root of actually what was going on and how she was actually feeling about it. Same thing that you said, dealing with the actual emotion of it, not just trying to fix things. So that's something that we have found really important. And so then, if we're asking okay, so why are we talking about this when we're talking about peer pressure? Well, the big thing is because when our kids are feeling pressure, they actually really need a safe space and an open space to share and talk through things. So we want them to think for themselves and figure out what's best for them, which also means, and this is why we talked about last week, moms, how we deal with peer pressure first, because it comes down to us. They may not make that same decision that we would have made. And we have to be able to deal with that in ourselves. But if we are in the fix it factor mode, then we're just going to fix and give an answer, and they don't actually get to think for themselves and make a decision for themselves. However, we know that they will eventually make decisions for themselves. And if we've always just fixed them, given them answers, then this is oftentimes when we see kids and we say like, oh my goodness, they're just all going crazy. They've gone off the rails. Oh, they're being so rebellious. Well, what I've noticed is most times it's kids that are just trying to be able to they can finally make their own decisions. They finally can have that freedom, and they don't have someone over their shoulder telling them what to do, how to do it, and all of that. And so it's not necessarily that they're rebellious. It's like they're just trying to make decisions for themselves. So instead of rebelling out of an emotion and in an emotion, which is also sometimes seen as fighting back, where they will do the opposite, probably of what we've said, because that's the way it works. Then if we can stay out of fix it factor, then they can actually learn how to make those decisions with emotion and logic and learn how to be autonomous. So one of the things that we found, we've taken and we work with an assessment, a wendii.ai assessment. And I'm gonna let Christine, if you want to just talk a little bit about it, and I'm gonna share my screen and go to this is my assessment from it. And then we're gonna use a bit about this to talk about how this relates to peer pressure and what we've learned about ourselves and help us. So
Well, over the years, I have taken a lot of personality tests. And what is different about wendii.ai is that it actually deals with our psychological needs. What is it that we need to be our most authentic selves? And it shows a whole lot of different areas of our lives. It can show things like what we're struggling in, or how we show up, and what we are most inclined to be, as well as how we can move towards being more authentic in who we are and that we're wired to be psychologically. So, what I thought was so amazing about wendii.ai was that it gave you sort of your own blueprint for yourself. And it wasn't so much about a personality trait as much as who you are and what you psychologically need to be that. And so we're going to be sort of covering, speaking of traits, there's a whole lot of them in this section. And we're going to cover how emotion can affect us in dealing with peer pressure and equipping our kids to do the same.
Mm-hmm. So you'll see it here. You'll see all the different traits that are assessed through this assessment, and we're picking emotion. So here are my numbers right here. So I have a 4 that's in a dark green, a filled in green, and then an 8 that's in a white square. And if I were to show you Christine's, she would have a 6 in a green, just a 6 right there. And so it's actually very interesting. So one thing that that we always laugh about is because how we're so similar. And that's one thing that we actually found, because in a lot of assessments that we've done, we have come out so similar, which is very true. This assessment has been very interesting because it's also shown us that we do have differences and where we come from. And in a couple of the other videos that we've done, we've talked about that in different areas of it. And we're always just sort of picking a different area. And today we're talking about emotion. So I have mine up here. So the 4, so what these, and you'll see a couple of those here, and Christine has those on hers too, just in different areas. So what this number means is how you naturally deal with life, deal with in emotion. For example, in this scenario, when there's a split like this, and there's like the white part in the 8, it generally means there's something going on, in this case, in my life, that's causing that number to swing up. In this case, sometimes it can go down, like you'll see down here, an influence, like naturally I'm a 7 but it will go, it's like there's a scenario or something going on in my life that's causing it to be a 4 right now. And in emotion, it's just going the opposite way. So if we go to emotion, and this is what it's talking about, is how frequently one experiences strong emotions. And so one, it being that you're just completely, someone would be completely detached from emotion, up to 10, where it'd be like constant outbursts and stuff like that. So Christine was a 6, right in the center there, moderate response. I am, as you can see here, I am normally a 4, where I would have less reaction. However, right now, I'm up in the 8, where I'm a little more passionate. And so one of the things too that we have really loved with this assessment is, as you will see right here, there's upsides and downsides to both the low and high scores. So it's being able for us to go in and take a look and go, okay, how is this adaptive in my life? How is this showing up in my life? Is this helping me? Is this, what's the other word that we always use? Is it serving me right now? Because in some scenarios, and when I look at this for me right now, when I'm like right now more up in the 8, the more passionate, it is something that isn't a need in my life, and that I'm dealing with. I am needing to be more passionate in my emotion and that. So you can see here the upside with a higher score, improving communication, being more authentic and open. It's something I'm working on. Knowing where they stand and feel, displaying emotion, aids in establishing limits, definitely something I'm working on. And so, whereas, down here, so it's like all of this, there's, it's not a good or bad thing with any of these. It's looking at, how is this serving me? Is it adaptive, maladaptive? If it's serving me, fantastic. Let's keep using it. If you're like, this really isn't serving me, it's not helping me. What have you found, Christine?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I have completely loved about this is I spent a lot of my life being in the box that someone else wanted me to be in, or that I thought someone else wanted me to be in, and I was living out of that. And with this assessment, it's more like you now have the parameters for who you are, and finding out what best works for me and what's working against me, and what I can do to shift that within who I am based on my psychological needs. And so for me, I love that there's no good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just, how is this working for me right now? And that's a huge paradigm shift for how so many of us are raised. And with the pressure of being a mom and raising kids, we often feel that, like, oh my gosh, I'm being a bad mom, or oh my goodness, I have to be a good mom, or whatever. And this just helps us to find, okay, where are my strengths, and how I can work within them, and what are some of one of the things that I struggle in, my weaknesses, and what can I do to shift things so that I'm not fighting those weaknesses all the time.
Mm-hmm. And the one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about why we pulled out emotion, which we could have talked about a bunch of different ones, but we wanted to talk about emotion specifically to do with peer pressure, was because when our kids come to us, and I'm sure any of you moms or anyone who's watching this, if you've dealt with someone who comes to you that's dealing with a really hard situation, or for example, the example that you gave, Christine, about like, hey, someone hurt me, they hurt your child, and you have to deal with that. Well, I don't know about you, but like emotion hits me hard and fast. And if if you're someone who maybe emotion is like down here, that can be like, actually, you know what it says here, you can be really even keel, a stabilizing force. That can be fantastic. If you're someone, right now, for me, I'm more on the higher side. Well, it's something that I need to be more aware of, because I can also, sort of the drama spilling over into a temper. I can have overreaction sometimes, someone that's higher on that scale. And so by me being aware of that, it just brings more awareness to my reaction, because how I react. And I don't, like, one thing that I remember hearing, and I was very aware of this when my kids were really little, when a child like falls, and if a parent does, oh my goodness, and like freaks out, the child will generally just start screaming and crying and whatever, no matter what happened, no matter if they're hurt or not. And what I learned to do was, I learned to take a breath, to stop and wait and take a breath in that moment, and take account of what actually happened, and watch my child to see what their reaction was. And most of the time, they wouldn't even cry. Most of the time, it was, and sometimes I'd be like, oh, that was a really good one. Good for you. Like, or, hey, do you need some help? Or if they did cry, like, oh, what happened? Where are you hurt? Like that kind of thing. But taking that moment to take that breath, to know kind of what's happening. And so that's why we wanted to take a look at emotion, because it's really important for us as a mom, as parents, as anyone, a caregiver, to understand like how we're wired, to know then best how can we help our kid. And in this sense, like if our child's coming to us dealing with a lot of peer pressure, whatever it is, to, I don't know, steal something, to sneak out, to do drugs, I don't know, whatever it is, there's so much our kids deal with. And that's why we started talking with, how do we deal with peer pressure? How do we deal with emotion as moms? Because it really depends on us. It comes down to us. And then being able to then help our kids. So this assessment is free for anyone. Anyone can take it. And for moms specifically, we actually have our own group in Slack that we connect with. And we do like a debrief. You can get a free debrief. Anyone, you don't have to be just a mom to take the assessment, but we will provide a link under the video that you can take the assessment for yourself, and you can see what your results are. And if you would like, we can also do like a debrief with you. So, but for us, it was just really, it brings awareness to how we interact and communicate in general, specifically right now with our kids, and when they come to talk to us about peer pressure. So we do have some skills that we each kind of talked a little bit about anyways, but do you want to just kind of run through the skills? We're not going to like do a teaching on them right now, but do you want to run through sort of some of the skills that we use or that help us?
Yeah, one of the ones that I love for myself is wait. What am I thinking and why am I talking? I sometimes even stop in the middle of a sentence and remind myself, be like, okay, you know what? Like, just scrap this. There's no point in saying that.
Yeah, which sometimes I have to breathe. I'm like,
and another thing for me is really asking what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and learning to shift my questions from closed ones, which I could get yes, no,
yeah, yes or no if you're actually lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise,
To They actually need to give me a somewhat of a sentence, and again, I often find myself in mid-sentence and then shifting that. Another quick one, although it might not be necessarily like a skill on its own, it's my tone of voice. And so often my youngest will be like, Mommy, are you mad? I'm thinking, what? Like,
no, I'm not mad.
I'm mad now.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So yeah, I'm starting to become hyper vigilant on my tone or the inflection in my voice. Yeah. And quite often I'm thinking about something else. I'm running through a mental to-do list, or I've got all these other things, and so perhaps my voice comes out a little flat, or maybe a little sharp, and it has nothing to do with the person in front of me. So maybe it's that I'm really working on being more present and having someone say, "Are you upset?" I'm like, wait, what?" And then also, if I am, being able to be like, "Yeah, actually, you know, I am feeling this when I'm thinking about whatever."
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of the couple. And I know we were going to talk about different ways that you can feel empathy as well. So I thought I'd
Mm.
sort of let you.
Well, one that a couple that I thought of as well, some other skills that we use is asking permission. And
Oh
one that
yes,
where we've gone, I know you have and I have as well with, and it's not just with our kids, with other people too, but one that we have both, I know, found very helpful is, hey, are you wanting me just to listen? Like, are you just wanting to vent right now? Or are you wanting some advice? And
yes,
so that's a little different than asking permission too. Like, hey, can I share with you something that I'm thinking? Hey, can I give you some advice or, that? But just even just the asking, like, hey, are you just wanting to vent right now? Or are you actually wanting my advice? Because I find a lot of times, even for myself, I've noticed sometimes I just need to vent. I just need to get it out. I
exactly.
just need to be able to be upset. And that's where, like, we added actually just today when we were talking about fix it factor and how we added in there the relating to someone else. Because sometimes, and like, let's say, talk about peer pressure when our kid comes to us and is talking about like whatever is going on, or maybe how they were wronged, how they were, and it's out of a really like helpful place. We're just trying to relate to that person, relate to our child, let them know that, hey, like, we're with you on this. However, if they're just trying to vent, if they just need to get it off their chest and they just want someone else just to sit with them and like, just, yeah, you know what, that just really sucks. Like, that's really hard. And oftentimes, like we've talked, that's just where it needs to end. And not like, maybe another time going back into like relate. But then definitely, and then that's where it comes to where there's different levels of empathy actually. Often we just talk about like, oh, having empathy or empathy versus sympathy or that kind of thing. But there's actually different levels of empathy that we've learned about, that we've talked more about, and they're really powerful. And there's not any one level that is, it's not a level as in like level 1, level 4, and 4 is better than 1 or anything like that. It's just different. Maybe there's a different way we can even say it, but different areas, different ways to show empathy, I guess, different ways to be empathetic. And we move in and out of all of them. Well, hopefully we want to move in and out of all of them at different times when it's appropriate with different people. And so, do you want to, like, the 4 levels? We could just like mention them, I guess, and then we're not going to like go into them all, like the details of them today. But you want to, the cog? Do you have them there or no?
I
Okay.
don't
Oh,
actually.
okay. Okay. No, it's totally good. So the different levels that we have of empathy, like cognitive. Although I think you always get the, like, I know how you feel, right?
I think I know how you
I
feel.
I think I know how you feel. So that's a cognitive. Then there's emotional, which is I
I know how you
feel.
feel.
You know how you
Yeah.
feel. I feel how you feel. The compassionate empathy is I'm moved by how you feel, and usually that goes into like possibly even doing something for someone else. And then the last one's the appreciative, and this one was a new one for me when we learned about it, and it's just appreciating just for what is. And that's often just the being with someone, just sitting with them. It's not the fixing and the changing and the teaching and all of that. So yeah, just like there's so many different things that we have found that have really helped us to keep us out of fix it factor, and to help us move through fix it factor, to help us move ourselves through those hard spaces with not just our kids, because honestly, all these skills and everything, they're not just with our kids, they're with anyone. And we found them so helpful. And so every Wednesday, like we said, every Wednesday we have our NJAM conversations. NJAM stands for Not Just a Mom. So we have our NJAM conversations. This Wednesday, September 1st, will be specific to our kids and peer pressure and how we can. And so we're going to be actually going through and some of the skills that we talked about and actually working on some of those, and how do they actually come up in like real life examples, and how can we do that? So otherwise though, like every Wednesday night we're on Zoom for our NJAM conversations. There's wendii assessment. You can definitely take that and just learn more about yourself. And social
we
media.
would love to debrief that with you and for you to join us on our Slack.
Definitely.
So
yes, all moms, anyone can take the assessments. We have a group just for moms. Anyone can take the assessments and get debriefs and all of that. So, and you can find us on all social media and everything. And so, yeah, that's it for us today. Next week, we're actually going to be starting a series, which we're really excited about.